everybody, this is Dr. Eliana Aaron, Director of EMA Care. I hope everyone is having a safe summer and relaxing a little bit, at least. Today we're going to talk about summer vacation. What is this going to look like? What are the options available for us? And what is there that we could do to have a pleasant summer vacation, but to also stay safe, because we can see clearly in many parts of the world, including Israel, that coronavirus has reemerged. We're getting our second wave that was not anticipated, and the result is that a lot of the plans that we thought we had over the summer are not necessarily going to be able to come to fruition. So we need to figure out, how do we get some kind of vacation in? It's something we look forward to. It's usually the only time of the year people can do something with their family. So let's see. First of all, people who plan to travel internationally should probably rein in some of those ideas. First of all, Europe may open up. So within Europe, at least travel may be possible. I'm not telling you it's the safest thing in the world, but at least it's possible. Europe is likely not going to allow Americans to travel into Europe. Canadians, yes, but not Americans. So there are going to be some restrictions in terms of where you can go. I don't necessarily think it's a good idea to travel abroad. If you don't have a good assessment of what's going on in that country, you may end up in a situation where you're in a less secure environment. For example, if you're in a country that doesn't require any kind of quarantine when you come in, then remember that people coming from very high-risk countries are also not going to be quarantined, and you're all going to be in that museum together. So I don't love the idea of going abroad this particular summer. I think that there are lots of other times to go abroad. It's just not worth the risk. So if we're staying local, what do we do? So, the classic question is hotel versus an Airbnb. So, in my opinion, and I have been trying to plan a vacation for my family, and I really did a very good assessment, I think, of what the pros and cons are of staying in a hotel versus an Airbnb. I have decided that an Airbnb is a safer option right now because we have more control over the situation. A hotel very much has to rely on the staff at the hotel to be able to maintain all of the regulations and to be able to maintain the very high level of infection precautions that we need to stay safe, especially in shared spaces. Remember that hotels have a lot of shared spaces. You check in, there's a bellhop, there's a reception, there's a concierge, and you have to sign something and you have to fill something out, and everything is shared spaces. And unless people are following it, everyone's following it, you get into a challenging situation. So I always like staying at hotels because I don't want to deal with anything when I'm on vacation. However, this year I am opting to go for something a little more secure. If you decide to go to a hotel, and I don't blame you if you want to, you have to be very careful when you're in those shared spaces. So, for example, when you're in the lobby, when you're in the dining room, when you're in even the hallway, which are could be quite narrow, when you're in the pool area, when you're in the lounge, or any of the other shared spaces in a hotel, it's very important that you are aware of your surroundings, you're aware of the high-touch areas, you are keeping your hands very clean, you are wearing your mask, and that you're not letting your children touch those same surfaces. So I think that's really important to note. When you get into your hotel room, I personally like to wipe down the surfaces just that, one time. And if you have a maid coming in every day to do service, and sometimes they come in twice a day, then after they leave, I would still wipe down the surfaces, because then I know I don't have to worry about it. So in my bag when I'm traveling, I'm going to carry those lovely antimicrobial wipes and alcohol wipes, so that I could wipe down different surfaces, including the remote control, the light switches, the key card. Remember, they give you a key card that they are handing to you with their bare hands. So I like to clean those things too, even when I use a credit card and someone else is swiping it for me, or swiping through a machine where lots of other things have swiped. I like to clean it afterwards. So I actually have a separate pocket in my pocketbook where I put my dirty credit cards, and then I wipe them down when I get home, or sometimes I have a wipe with me and I wipe it down and return it to its proper place. Now, when you're in an Airbnb, so the advantage, sorry, going back to hotel, excuse me, you also have to be aware that when you're in at breakfast in Israel, they serve a very lovely buffet. The buffet that they serve has a lot of, normally, is help yourself salads, cheeses, fish. There are individual a la carte items as well. So all of these things should be looked at with a keen eye. Most hotels that are open right now are serving where a server is actually serving you. So the buffet actually is set up differently so that someone is serving you and you're not serving yourself. The concern is that if everyone is touching those handles of those spoons and serving devices, that's a great way to get sick. The food itself is not going to give you corona. It doesn't look like food gives you corona. But shared surfaces and items absolutely could. So all you need is a little kid who wipes his nose and then, touches a spoon or a fork. And that's a great way to get corona. Actually, that's a horrible way to get corona, but it's an easy thing to prevent if the hotel is following the regulations. So no buffets. So the advantage of, we're going to talk about pools in a minute. I'm going to put that aside. But the advantage, let's say, of going to an Airbnb or a Zimmer is that when you get to the Airbnb or the Zimmer, well, that space is yours. Now, most of these places will offer you extra cleaning services if you want, in which case, after the cleaning service, you should also wipe down. When I get to an Airbnb, I wipe down all the shared surfaces just that one time, and then it's my space, and I don't have to deal with it again. So usually that takes 5 to 10 minutes, depending on the size of the apartment or house that you are renting, or the room you're renting, and you wipe down the shared surfaces, and then you're done. You wipe down, that includes the remote, that includes the light switches, the air conditioner remote, all that stuff gets wiped down. So I like that because then I just put my wipes away and I don't have to deal with it. The other advantage is that I don't have to deal with food issues and worried that this server is not covering his face properly and that server just talked on his phone and then served. I don't have to look how other people are doing. I just have to deal with myself. So in a situation like that, it's very easy to pack, to get yourself some breakfast. You can even order in breakfast. A lot of these restaurants are delivering even breakfast, delicious breakfast. And so you could do that if you would like, or you could just make a breakfast very simple, yogurts and eggs or something very simple, and go out for your other meals. You could also not go out for your other meals. So that's totally up to you and you get to decide. The disadvantage of an Airbnb is that you do have to deal with your own food, but nowadays with everyone delivering, it's really less of an issue. I do recommend that when you're on vacation and you're choosing a restaurant, that you choose an outdoor restaurant, and you sit outdoors where there's a lot of lovely fresh air, and you don't have to worry as much about it. I always tell people when I go to a restaurant, I have gone to a couple of restaurants, to please wipe down the surfaces with the alcohol wipes or the disinfectant wipes when I'm there. Like, I want to see them do it myself. Sometimes I'll ask them for an extra wipe or two, and I'll be a little crazy. I'll wipe down the handles of my forks and knives because, you know, again, the person serving me is, you know, 17, 18, 19 years old sometimes, and they may not have the best level of coronavirus level hygiene. So depending on the situation, you could do that. You don't have to do that. Depends how neurotic you are. The water, when it comes out, you know, do you wipe down the container or not? I do. You don't have to. Just keep your hands clean. What I would say is, in choosing what you can do when you're on vacation, I would avoid museums. A lot of the museums in Israel have not opened, and the reason why is because it's very hard for them to follow the regulations of the Ministry of Health. It's very hard to keep people away from each other in a museum. People tend to sort of crowd over the more exciting exhibitions. And in an art museum, people, you know, look at a piece of art for a long time, and if you have a 2-meter distance, then no one else can see that piece of art, and that's very challenging. So I would actually avoid museums even if they are open. I would stick with outdoor activities. I would do boating, I would do hiking, I would do visiting outdoor parks. Going to a not that crowded beach. There are a few not that crowded beaches in Israel. That seems to be okay. And just sticking together with your family and staying away from other people. When you actually are going into the water, you can't wear a mask because masks are not valid in the water. So that means you really have to keep your distance. But remember that when you're in an area that has water, there's wind, there's lots of fresh air, and the chances of catching something with all of that wind at the beach or all that wind when you're going whitewater rafting is extremely rare. And I think that that would be fine. There really isn't a choice because you can't wear a mask when you're in those situations. When you're picnicking, you know, picnic away from other people. When you're hiking, keep your distance from the next group. And you should wear a mask unless you're actually exercising hiking. You know, if you're just walking, you know, you could wear a mask. And make sure to have a mask with you. There have been people who have been exercising and have been stopped by the police. Because even though you're exercising and you may not need a mask when you're exercising, you have to have the mask visible so the police can see that you have it. So you could hang it on your wrist, you could put it here if you're not sweating too much. But you have to have that visible so that they see that when I stop exercising, I take it and I put it back on my face. Now, pools. The pools in Israel have been open for a few weeks, which is very exciting. And I'm just going to quickly check that. The pools have been open for quite a few weeks. I would say over 2 weeks. I can't find exactly where it is, but over 2 weeks that they've been open. So like I said before, you can't wear a mask in a pool. And there are regulations as to how many people can be in the water, how many people could be on the side, and it should be followed, and people should be counting how many people are going in. In the pool where I live, they've divided up the time so that there could be 2 groups of women going in for an hour at a time, and that seems to be some kind of a solution. It means you can't go for a day at the pool, maybe like you used to, where you spend 4 or 5 hours, because other people have to cycle in. So that's something to consider. The number of people allowed in the showers, in the locker rooms, are also limited. So make sure that you're going to a pool that's keeping to the regulations. I think that's very important. And do your research. You know, don't go to any pool. Make sure that it is being maintained safely. There is no evidence that coronavirus is affected or not affected by the pool. There have not been cases that I have heard of people catching coronavirus when swimming. That being said, when you're in a pool, you do have to keep your distance from other people, because there's no reason why someone breathing towards you or sneezing towards you, because that can happen in a pool, isn't going to get inhaled by you just because you're at a pool. I would avoid indoor pools and try to stick with outdoor pools, because that just makes more sense to me, more fresh air. I like fresh air. And coronavirus does not like fresh air, so that means it's good. So pools seem to be less of a hazard than was thought, but it's still an unknown, so I would use caution. I have not been to the pool this season. An option that people have is to rent an Airbnb or a Zimmer that has a private pool, and then you don't have to worry about other people jumping in right next to you, swimming right next to you, shouting and screaming at their friends, which means droplets, droplets, droplets. So that's another possibility. Look, cases keep going up. We're in our second wave. We've had thousands of cases in the last few weeks, and it's a dangerous situation. And balancing the choices that we have to make over the summer with keeping safe and keeping our families safe is very important. Another thing I would recommend, and I've said this already this week, is it's time for us, it was time already last week, but it's time for us to once again go back and hunker down as far as our elderly. People over the age of 70 have to be taken care of. We don't want them exposed to too many school-age kids that are in school. We want to protect them and keep them within a family union. We want to visit them carefully. People that have other exposures should not be touching people over the age of 70. They should be keeping a 2-meter distance and even wearing a mask in their presence. We have to protect them. It's our job. I hope everyone is able to somehow find some good family time during this crisis. It's a challenging time for everybody all over the world, but summer is summer and people want to go out, and I hope you make good decisions and informed decisions about having a summer vacation. Take care.